all we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. Of the freedom of assembly, somewhere I read, of the freedom of speech, somewhere I read, of the freedom of press, somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
Obviously, I think that we all agree that systemic racism is not a good thing. It's evil, it's bad, and it may be hard to point fingers at specific individuals or people because it's systemic. But then there's another area that at least that I like to talk about, and that is the responsibility. If African Americans, people of color, are victims of racism, I also like to talk about the responsibility that blacks have in not only standing against systemic racism, but what we do to our own people. And so with that in mind, the question that I want to deal with, that I want to throw out on the floor for all of us to sort of debate about today is this. Do black artists, whether it's movies or music, feed into the stereotypes that deepen systemic racism by accepting certain roles or producing certain lyrics that demean black women, that stereotype black men because they need a job? Okay, that's a long question, but I'm going to ask it again. Do black artists, whether in movies or music, feed into the stereotypes that deepen systemic racism, deepen what people feel about us, whether it's on television or music, whatever it is, by accepting certain roles or producing certain lyrics that demean black women and men because they need a job?
I don't think their intent per se is to do that. I think Black America's gotten a little better in those genres in terms of roles that they will accept in Hollywood. My issue with that is that those that I guess my brother said it before, they got to work. People have to eat. But my thing is that I think they feed into the public's perception of what they want. If it's rap music, they're sort of feeding into what the people are asking for. That type of that depiction of lifestyle. If you look at a lot of these artists that put forth this facade, sometimes they don't own or have half the stuff that they kind of flaunt. My issue with systemic racism in that role is that this depiction that white America has of us, that we're lawless. I've said it before, that we're lawless, uneducated, aggressive. They put out this negative perception unless it's making money for them, i.e. the NBA, the NFL, when they drafting players, they're looking for the same negative connotation that they give. That's the kind of player that they want to gravitate to. If you're a police officer, just going away from social media, if they want you to get into a narcotics unit, they're looking for the black and Hispanic officer that's going to infiltrate and fill in. So that negative perception, they utilize to their benefit. And then with movies, I mean, I think the roles have gotten a little crazy, but I particularly wasn't a fan of Training Day because I felt a lot of the negative perception that was put out there. That's just my opinion on that.
Okay.
Well, I've been in the film business for almost 30 years, over 30 years. And what I'm going to say is that a lot of people don't really understand what the dynamic is, and you should be able to. When you don't own, what choices do you have?
Okay.
A lot of it has to do with these depictions is, the overseas market. People don't even realize if you ever listen to a film coming out, the numbers is about the opening weekend, but then also what it does overseas. Overseas love to see this stereotype of black people being depicted in a certain way. Really? And that's where the money generates at. Hollywood knows this. A black filmmaker doesn't get the same amount of revenue to make a film that white filmmakers do. A lot of people don't even realize that Spike Lee, one of his most famous projects, which was Malcolm X, he had to go beg, borrow, and get money to finish the project off because Hollywood gave him a limited amount of money for this great story.
Did he have to make it 3 hours? Never mind. Go ahead.
No. Listen. Truly, he did.
No, I got you. No, I was only.
I know. But,
respect, Spike. Respect.
But what I'm saying to you is that it's easy to sit back and say the harm that it's doing. At the end of the day, somebody's going to do it. But we need to get into ownership, just like the music. We used to have this thing called conscious rap. Do we have it now? Where did it go? Because number one, we didn't own it, but number two, as the consumer, we didn't want it. See, it's one thing to say, well, playing the drug dealer and this and that, but if we're not trying to make our own films and if we're not supporting them, where does the power come in at?
Yeah, I got you.
Jackie Robinson's movie, which, think about it. The icon, Jackie Robinson, played by a black man, only garnered less than $50 million at the box office. Even when we do positive films, we don't support them. So at some point, we got to look at ourselves as the consumer and realize that we are buying ratchet music. We don't want conscious music. We are buying. We buy into the stereotype. Anything positive, we're not backing it. So where do we win at?
But my question would be, why is it that, like, if we're just looking at it from a ratio standpoint, there's a lot more negative things made than there are positive. That's a fact. So
actually, it's not.
You
listen.
Okay.
There's a plethora of black Christian movies that we do not take on, which we do not watch. I bet you right now, think about it. War Room was one of the best movies made, Christian movies made, and there's a lot of Christians that never went to see it, don't even know about it.
No. I'm not saying that there aren't positive things made. I'm saying that there are more negative things made than there are positive.
Because you have white Hollywood running.
Yeah, but my thing is, and I agree with that. But if you're making more negative things, if we're just looking at it from a ratio standpoint, if it's more negative things for me to choose from than there are positive, the chances are that I'm probably going to watch more negative things than I am positive.
Now, let me hit you with something. Why is black reality television so popular? Because it's so negative. Yeah. And as long as we keep tuning into it, you see what I'm saying to you? There's a lot of positive out there. Just we don't tune into it. It is the negative, and that's why Hollywood keep on making these negative images, because they know it sells. Just like the music.
But we don't hold each other accountable either when these things happen. You got these people making this kind of music, though, and we're not holding them accountable. We're not speaking up. We're not saying nothing about it. Look at back in the 70s, they had the black exploitation movies, right? And how we had to be depicted. If you guys don't know, just Google it. Right. But we had to play
Foxy Brown.
We had to play pimps and pushers and. You know what I'm saying?
Cleopatra Jones.
Listen, and let's be real. That was the only roles we were getting.
John Shaw.
Okay, so think about it like this. It's white Hollywood. They say, we got 7 guys here. Y'all going to play drug dealers. Here's your break. Here's a way there to make money. How many of us is going to say back in the 70s when $20 was actually $500 that you will do it and you got talent? Yeah. Because, again, you had to see. It's easy for us to look back and question what somebody did that made a way for what's going on now. You wouldn't have Denzel Washington without those movies back then.
So let's make it real time. If there was a organization or a company that was paying, what do you consider a lot of money to be making an hour at a job?
To make an hour at a job?
Yeah.
$25 an hour.
$25 an hour. Would you work for $25 an hour? Or would you like take a job for $25?
Yeah, I would do that.
Okay, so if somebody was paying you $45 an hour to pick cotton,
I'm not doing that.
Why not?
Because
But
of
why not,
evolution.
though?
Because of evolution.
no, but
You-
no, not because
follow me. No. Because you asked the question in the wrong manner. Because
Okay.
here's the deal: if the only job that was available
You
at
would
that
do it?
time, because listen, brother, we had no choice. We wasn't getting no money for it. It was 5 cents. It was 2 cents.
No, but I'm asking you, would you do it?
Would I do it back then? Yeah.
We're talking about a job.
Yeah. It's because listen, Steph, here's the deal. It's easy for you to sit here now that you've benefited off of those that have picked cotton.
Yeah.
So you're saying you wouldn't do it, Steph? You're saying you wouldn't do it?
I wouldn't do it.
See, yeah, okay.
But
If that was the only, you wouldn't do it. You would
feed your family.
right? To feed your family.
No, I would not. I would not. But I think that comes from obviously what you were just saying, the fact of me being born in the generation that I'm born in.
You have the freedom to
but
say, I
exactly.
can't.
Yeah, so that has a lot to do with it. But the other side of it is because of what you also said, in the fact that I know that I'm here because there was a lot of my ancestors that did pick cotton, and I know what comes with that. So I would never take a job to pick cotton, even if that was the only job, because for me, the way that I would look at it is I would find another way.
Steph, let me say this. There was a lot of people that felt like you back then, and they got murdered. They got slaughtered. Because again, think about what you said earlier. Right. You were labor. If you wasn't going to give us labor, then you was no use to us. So now think about it, Steph. Take yourself back there. You got a family, you got children. Everyone depends on you. Getting out there in that field, picking that cotton, as demeaning as it was, it fed your family and it kept you alive.
But that's why I'm talking about real time.
But that's why I said, now when you ask me today, no. But if you take me back then, I ain't got no choice.
But that's exactly why I said real time. Because we're talking about something that's happening in real time.
Right.
Listen to what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so if I can interject, I was going to say that. I was going to say, I can sort of, you see, I'm kind of in the middle when it comes to a role that a person accepts because they don't have a choice. Right? I want to feed my family. I can understand that. Things that look demeaning or things that are stereotypical, I can understand that. I think what I have more problems with is not even if so much that you have that you have to accept that role today. I have a problem if you're producing it. If you're the one that's creating it.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what I have a problem with.
Exactly.
And if you think about Hollywood Shuffle, when Robert Townsend made Hollywood Shuffle, that was a mind-blowing movie because he pulled back the veil about how Black Hollywood was doing it to themselves. But once again, and I'm going to go back to what you asked, what I'm going to say to you is this. Today's Hollywood is different than back then. That's why I bring up evolution. Now actors got more choices to choose from what they want to do. There's less roles out there to just be mammy. You know, that time is gone. But if you look back and question what they did, that's why I say we are wrong for that. Because they paved the way for what we have now.
Yeah, but I think that the question was talking about people taking roles now. That's why I asked the question that I asked. If you were asked to do that in real time today, would you do it? And realistically, it's asking the same question because the connotation and the preconceived notions of what it is to you to pick cotton is the reasons why you would say no. The same that, and I would assume that your reasoning of not choosing the role would be the same thing. Like, I know what you're going to use this for. Like, I know what the gain is for you too.
You made it clear. Now.
Yeah,
It wasn't clear with how.
That's
how you
what,
put it.
like, to me, that's what I was getting at. Is like, I know what you're going to use this for. So whether it's art, acting, whatever it is, if I know what your narrative that you're trying to paint, I understand what Pastor Kurt is saying as far as if you're the producer, but if you're the actor, and you've been acting, like you know how the acting game goes, you know what they're using it for.
Oh, you can
And I
turn
think
it
too
down.
we got to do a lot of new artists are going underground. A lot of people are being discovered through social media, through podcasts, through YouTubes, and I think maybe that may be a way to kind of get that kind of power at the table to kind of take our
That's
talent.
ownership.
I agree.
That's going back to
Yeah,
owning
I agree.
what you do, because when you own it, you control it. That's a huge difference. But
Yeah.
let me say this to you. I don't use the N-word, period. I would love to
Thank
see,
God.
I would love to see the artist there today that has money, that has the bag, as everybody talk about, I'm chasing the bag. And they're going to make an album, or they're going to drop tracks, and they're not going to use the N-word, period. Because we all know that if you don't use certain words, if you don't put the gunplay into it, it ain't going to sell.
That's a good point.
You follow me?
That's a good point.
Because let me say this. We sit here and talk about hip hop. And I sit in this room right now and I tell you something. The best hip hop out there is Christian hip hop. But it's not the most popular. It's the most cleanest. It has the strongest message, but it ain't the most popular. Why? Because you can't get the bag off of it. You see, because the negative music is what gets you the bag.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Okay,
That's too bad.
that's what gets you on Instagram showing all this money and throwing the money. It's the negative music. But if y'all really think about it, let's talk about it. If you take the Christian hip hop and really put it out there and really get us really buying it, that's the best music out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you ever, speaking
Drop
of
the
Christian
mic on
hip hop.
Steph. Look at his face. Look at his face.
I want to ask one last question, but I don't want to leave Vinny and the Meat out if they wanted to contribute to this question. But just sort of like as they say, a shameless plug, talking about Christian hip hop, right? The best group that I've ever heard in terms of lyrics and still biblical was Cross Movement. And most of you probably, well, the younger people haven't heard of them,
And
but they were so good.
And Curtis,
Biblically sound.
most Christian hip hop is owned by black people. I want you to think about that for a moment.
True. Okay.
And it's the most under supported music genre that we have today.
Okay. All right. I want to ask
Come
one
on,
last
Steph.
question.
Hold on,
Did you guys?
hold on, Kurt.
He got to get the other panelists in there, man. You don't want them to fade too far out the door.
That's
We can
right.
hit that back
That's
another
right.
time. 'Cause
Let somebody else talk, John.
You're gonna have to point me in the right direction because, Christians, Christian-based media, I am let down by. Movies, trash. Music, like you got to point me. I'm serious. You got to point me in the right direction because it's been rough. It's
Yeah.
been a rough
Got
time.
to get
I
on your
can't-
podcast. Got to get on your podcast.
Well, listen, I would
Point me.
No, I kind of, and maybe I'm not as knowledgeable in the area also, but after War Room and the Christian movies that those brothers make, a lot of them aren't good.
I stopped watching Christian movies
I
before
would
War
say-
Room, so I haven't even seen it.
But I would say also
have
that-
you?
Because all the other Christian movies ruined it
See,
for
but
me.
wait. But see, that's the whole key. You can't let the others ruin what is very good for you because you got to test it out. Because listen, War Room, Courageous,
Right.
There's 3 others. Strong depiction of us within Christianity, positive movies, man. But the problem is, again, we don't support.
But I would attribute some of the lack of knowledge of Christian hip hop, Christian media, as you presume. I would attribute a lot of that to the notoriety of it. Like he said, one of the things that John said was that there's not a lot of Christian hip hop that sells. Well, you still have like people like Lecrae that had the #1 hip hop album and won a Grammy when he dropped Anomaly. You know, you have Will Smith that also is not a Christian rapper, but he doesn't curse in his music, and he sold 60 million records. So I mean, it's possible.
20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago, but it was 20 years ago, but you got to think about 20 years ago. Think about who was the biggest artist 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the
Right.
biggest artist was Tupac.
But you had conscious rap also.
But I think
See
we
what I'm
too,
saying
we
to
gotta
you?
Yeah,
have.
but it's
But
conscious.
there's a lane for it. See,
But-
there's no lane for it right now.
What, for conscious rap? I don't agree with that either.
It's about
Because,
access.
I mean, realistic, yeah, and that's what it
Access.
comes down to. Because realistically, you have to be searching for it. If we're talking about conscious rap, you could listen to a Kendrick Lamar or you could listen to a J. Cole, and that's conscious rap.
But listen what you said. You got to search for it. See, Kendrick, Jay, both those cats has a platform that people know off the rip.
Yeah.
40 million followers. You follow what I'm saying to you?
100%,
Okay, that's the difference though. What I'm
But a
saying
lot of
to you
these
is-
artists that are out there now, through the underground, they have access. I sat with my two nephews last weekend, and I watched
about
them
it.
in my
Tell 'em
basement,
about it.
and they had the YouTube, and they were just going from one rap
Yeah.
video to the next. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, and I'm looking at it, each one, the
Same
rappers
thing.
are all gang affiliated.
Same
They
thing.
all standing on their block. They're all talking about, the money bags they get and the women, the cars. And then I'm
that-
asking them, I said, what do you guys hear in this music? Everything with them was about the beat. The beat was the draw. They weren't really too focused. But then this rapper is hard. It's almost like baseball cards. This rapper has a whole lineup. His RBI and all that.
Yeah.
How many gang affiliations he got? How many murders he talk about in this video? I'm like, is this what's drawing our young people to the culture?
But
And
excuse me a second. Listen, let me drop something on y'all. Now, I'm a marketing minor. I just want to tell you something. Marketing is about images and it's put in your subliminal. What he just said is powerful because what they're doing is taking the beat, drawing you in with the beat, and giving you 3 to 4 minutes of negative imagery to embed into your head. So when you walk away, you thinking of trap, you thinking of crime, you thinking of the bag, because all that imagery for the past 3.5 to 4 minutes you have soaked in, all based upon the
and then
beat
go-
bringing you in.
I also
Okay.
want to say this.
And last one, and I'll wrap it up.
Okay, I also want to say this because I actually am a musician. I rap. So
Very
I
good
feel
one.
like for one, I think that part of the reason why there is a scarcity in what it is that you're talking about with conscious rap and people that's talking about something positive is because of the narrative that we're talking about right now. I think that for one, there is no such thing as lanes anymore. There's no such thing as lanes because we have this now. So there's no such thing as lanes. There are people that you will never hear on the radio that can sell out a small venue like the Jacob Javits Center, or they can sell out a small a venue somewhere else in not just New York City but somewhere else across the states. And I think that the reason why we don't see too much of that is because a person might start and won't finish it because of the narrative that is portrayed about positive and positivity. I mean, the positivity that is said in rap. So if people continue to push this narrative of if you're positive, you're not going to make no money. That's why people don't try to do it. Like that's part of the reason why people don't try to do it.
But that's a fact though, because of, let me say it. Yo, if you don't have a certain amount of followers, you can't get to Jacob Javits Center. Okay? So that's again, and what's going to get you the followers nowadays is your imagery which you put out there. That's what gets people to follow you. Yo,
And sometimes what you put out there, you can't
Get you killed.
You can't retract.
100%.
Pop smoke.
right? No, listen.
They were outside.
Listen what I'm saying to you.
Last point,
And
John.
that's why it's so powerful is what you're saying is not wrong. But what I'm saying to you is this. Today's music is controlled by followers, and if it ain't negative, the positive, it ain't getting heard. Now, I'm not saying it's not out there, but they're not on the same level because you
I
got to
agree.
get the followers.
I agree.
Okay. All right. So obviously, you guys want to say anything before I wrap it up?
I'm here to listen.
Okay.
This is
All right.
this is what I needed to do. I just needed to be in the conversation, not
Okay.
contribute anything.
All right, so
need to be in the room, right? I just need to be in the room.
Where we started from with the question, obviously, was about the negativity and all that stuff. I think as we wrap this up, and I'll make the closing remarks. I hope that we can change the fact that if it's not positive, it's not going to be heard, because obviously the goal is the numbers, right? And so. And I don't, because I'm not in the marketing industry or the music industry, I don't know how all of that works. But here's what I believe that I do know. If there is a concerted effort to really push and support the kind of positivity, because I think the goal is to change the image, right? I think that we all kind of agree with that. How that's done, we may have a difference of opinion on, what's this kind of rap or that kind of rap or that kind of music, we may have different opinions on. But for me, at least, the image of a black young man or an African American man, it just that, even, I think there's some change, but I think the change is slow. And whatever it takes for us to get out there, this positive image that fathers are in the home, that fathers can care for their kids, and a young black man can walk respectfully. He may talk the language of his streets, but that don't make him a thug. All of that stuff. If there's a way that we can do that, and let's say, because we have, as Steph said, he's a rapper, and we have some really good rappers in this church. We put out the Cypher every Black History. I wish that could go like viral crazy. If you guys know producers, please let me know so I can get these guys on the air, because they are very, very good. And I think if we can start to put that out and push that out, that would be a great thing. All right?
But that perception too is we have to get that under control too, because it's not just our young people, it's not just us that watches our music.
Right.
Those in law enforcement watch our videos. They got hip hop units. And so a lot of when we get pulled over, when we get looked at a certain way, a lot of that, they're looking at our culture and they don't understand what we're doing, like what we talked about. And right away, they just go right in.
Okay. All right, let me close with the last question. Hold you. Answer this question. Close with the last question.
Go ahead.
When is the appropriate age to speak to your child about race if you're black? When is the appropriate age to speak to your child about race? And does it matter based on their gender, boy or girl? When is the appropriate age? What do you think?
As soon as he can talk.
Okay.
As soon as he can talk. You got to begin to prepare our young people.
Do you think it matters what gender?
No.
Do you think it matters what gender it is?
No, but more so, you got both male and female, but more so because our males are targeted.
Right.
You got to get to them right away.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put something else on the table that people don't talk about, and as young as possible, talk about not only racism, but colorism.
Yeah.
I got my grandson over the house, and he's only 8 months old. And I'm working with him on the floor, and he's kind of crying because he can't get this foot up to center. And I was telling my daughter today, I was saying, I'm getting him prepared to begin to stand on his own 2 feet. Because as long as you keep reaching out for him and helping him, their brains are a lot further along than ours. As we get older, we lose our knowledge.
Right.
They're walking computers, and that's all they know.
Right.
But also, let me just add something. I don't know how many of y'all are fathers here, but what I'm going to say is that a lot of adults are afraid to even talk about race.
I can't imagine that. Why?
Because of it's the elephant in the room. A lot of times we like to shelter our kids from what we know is out there. We don't want to give them all the tools until something happened. We aren't, just like Ray is talking about. Ray is proactive, but we're more reactive by nature, by culture. We are reactive to things instead of being
Right.
proactive.
That's a good point.
Okay?
That's a good point.
Yo, you got to start having these conversations, not be afraid to. Think about it just like this. How many parents have the sex conversation? And even though you know that they're going to leave the nest and know what's out there, but we're afraid to have certain dialogue and certain conversations with our kids.
Yeah.
I'm just being, but it's real. That's why I said,
Right.
you know, it is. But we as adults have been taught not to communicate properly the way we need to until something happens.
Yeah.
And our kids are internalizing.
Right.
They
I think-
internalize it so much.
I think that the first panel that we did, I remember I was talking about being socialized into thinking that darker was inferior to being lighter.
Right.
And John said, hey, where did you get that? And he was absolutely right. I think exposure, especially nowadays, exposure is impossible to cap, right? Like you have to kind of like lock a kid in the basement
Right.
and only feed them through like a doggy door to make sure that they don't get the image of the world that you want to protect them from. And
Right.
even that does significant damage. But if we don't have the conversation, somebody else will. And so wherever they're going to pull their beliefs and values and ideas from, it's already discipling them, right? It's already feeding them this understanding of the world. So when you have the ability to control the conversation, or worse, if you passed up that opportunity, modeling repentance and modeling an apology and just saying, I didn't serve you well in this area, but I'm sorry, can we have this conversation now? So I think, I agree with what you guys are saying. The earlier, the better. My son is 3 months old, 3.5 months now, and he's black. And we're reading him books written by black, Indian, Hispanic. Just we're exposing just brownness. We're exposing
Right.
color, and through that, there's going to be this associate. We have people in and out of the house, and he sees different faces, different people, different shapes all the time. And eventually, the conversation is going to be had where it's like, hey, this is what our different skin tones represent in this country. But using developmentally appropriate language is important. We might want to flex our information or even our anger and our emotions, and sometimes kids are too young to understand that. So I don't think that there's a bad age to have the conversation. I think that parents need to exercise significant amounts of wisdom
Right.
on how to communicate that in a way that the child will understand. I think saying things like "I don't know" is big. You know, when a child feels safe enough to ask questions, when you say "I don't know," but let's learn together, I think that gives your child the permission to go, "Hey, I'm going to be a lifelong learner." And when you say "let's learn together," I would say own up to that promise. Don't just pacify the situation and say, "Oh, I don't know, but we can learn," and never talk about it. It kind of reminds me of the conversation you had with your daughters about cheese, and you were like, "Yeah, we'll look into it later." And then 3 hours later, your daughter was like, "Dad, you promised we would look into it. When are we going to look into it?" And then I think lastly, like not being afraid to show emotion. And I can only speak like a foreigner observation to black culture and black home life, but I would assume that black men aren't really taught how to show emotion well, right? Unless it's anger, unless it's some of those things. And
Yeah,
so
I would agree.
when it comes to grieving, when it comes to those difficult emotions that we even as men have been socialized to toughen up and just be a man.
Right.
No, like sometimes those things have to be just shown, obviously in a way that doesn't overwhelm our kids, but still shown like, hey, you're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be angry about stuff like this.
But the rite of passage was taught to us. Strength was not by showing vulnerability. So that was something that was passed down.
Right.
You know, I think that when I was growing up, and probably Ray also and Kurt, you can probably think about the times that you've seen your father or uncle cry, or you know, if it's not death, big brother get emotional. It wasn't a part of it, and you would always say man up or toughen up. You
Right.
know, that was the rite of passage. But today's time, I think more people are more open now, more open-minded.
Right.
That yes, you can let your feelings
Right.
out. Yes, you can open. You can show vulnerability. But back when I was growing up, man, you couldn't do that, especially in some circles, kid. It wasn't a good thing.
Right. All right, men. As usual, Vinny, Namit, Ray, John, Stephen. I want to thank you all. This has been a great discussion, another one for today. So we're gonna get ready to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you for tuning in to us today and watching this. Continue to spread the word as we continue to talk about it. We're going to be doing these from time to time. And we just want to go there in terms of talking about what we can do to change our spheres of influence. Wherever you live, wherever injustices, racism, whatever it is that's going on, and it all started with us talking about systemic racism, but whatever level of injustice there is, let's confront things head on and no longer not deal with issues. So thank you for tuning in. Leave us a comment. Again, let us know some of the things that you like to talk about, and we will have it on a future session. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you.